Hello once again, children. In our last video, we looked at the role of the ear in bringing about the sensation of hearing, and we learned about a mnemonic that will help us in remembering the pathway taken by the sound waves as it passes through the outer ear, then the middle ear, and finally it becomes pressure waves in the inner ear because it passes through the fluid that is found in the inner ear, until eventually the receptors in the cochlea are stimulated, that is the organ of Corti. Impulses are created and taken via the auditory nerve right to your cerebrum, where the impulse is interpreted. So that is the pathway taken by the sound waves as it passes through the ear. Today we're going to be looking at the role played by the ear in bringing about balance. And the structures which are involved are the structures that we haven't spoken about as yet. And here you have your 3 semicircular canals. And then you have your sacculus and utriculus, which are 2 little sacs, membranous sacs, which lie inside of this area here. Well, the area is called the vestibule, but don't complicate things. Just remember the 2 sacs that are found inside of here are the sacculus and utriculus. Now, the semicircular canals, as well as the sacculus and utriculus, both play a role in balance, but each of these structures have receptors which are sensitive to different stimuli. Your semicircular canals, my darlings, notice there are 3 once again, and they lie at right angles to each other, so that no matter which direction you move your head in, at least one of those semicircular canals would be able to pick up that particular stimulus. So where is the stimulus picked up? It is picked up in the swollen area at the bottom of your semicircular canal. Here you can see it clearly. And that swollen area here is called your ampulla. So your semicircular canal has got the ampulla, and inside the ampulla, let me just show you, inside the ampulla, my darlings, you would find that, let's take your ampulla here, yes, inside of this ampulla, you would find there are receptors which are sensitive to the speed and direction of movement. So if these blue little things represent those receptors are called cristae, C-R-I-S-T-A-E. So when the fluid moves inside the semicircular canal, the fluid will now go and stimulate this cristae, and impulses will be created, which will be taken up to the cerebellum, because the cerebellum is for balance. And then the cerebellum itself will send impulses down to your muscles of your body to restore your balance. So how do we remember what the semicircular canal does? There is a mnemonic which I have created, and you can use this mnemonic, and the mnemonic goes as follows: S-A-C, just to trigger your memory. The S standing for, in your semicircular canals, at the bottom you got your A, which is your ampulla, that is that fatty portion at the bottom. And inside the ampulla, you've got this receptors which I called cristae, isn't that so? Which are sensitive to speed and direction of movement. And they become stimulated, impulses are created. Remember, when a receptor is stimulated, impulses are created and taken via the auditory nerve to the cerebellum. Now, it can't be the same auditory nerve going to the cerebrum to bring about hearing. There is a branch of the auditory nerve which goes to your cerebellum, where the impulse is interpreted, and the cerebellum in turn will send impulses down to your muscles. So that's your role of your semicircular canals. Good. Then your succulus and utriculus, my children, they've also got receptors inside of them. So where will these receptors be found? They'll be found inside here. Sorry, let me just take this guy away and get this here. Yeah. So you find the receptors inside here. This is the area where you got your succulus and utriculus. See? So you'd find the receptors inside here. Ooh, my drawing is not too good, but just for you to understand that the receptors now, which are found in the succulus and utriculus, are different from the receptors which are found in the semicircular canals. Now, these receptors are sensitive to gravitational pull. In other words, the position of your head in respect to gravity. Okay, so they are sensitive to gravitational pull. So when they are stimulated, once again, impulses are created, and once again, impulses are taken up to your cerebellum, and cerebellum in turn will send impulses down to your muscles to restore the balance. So these structures, once again, your three semicircular canals, and the sacs inside here called your succulus and utriculus, they play a role in balance. How do you remember the succulus and utriculus one? Here's yet another mnemonic that we have created. You can either remember it as gums, G-U-M-S, okay? Or let's try some first so you can remember that. So the succulus and utriculus have got the receptor called the maculae. That's how you remember it as. It's not summaculae, okay? Succulus and utriculus have got maculae, which you remember as some. The reason why I use gums is for you to know that the maculae is sensitive to G, gums, and G stands for gravity. So while these are sensitive to gravity, your succulus and utriculus, your semicircular canal is sensitive to the speed and direction of movement. Okay, so let's just clear up all of this here before we look at how they expect you to answer this in your papers. And of course, kindly learn this off by heart. Take time and learn it off by heart, and you'd find that you'd be able to score 5 marks in the exam. So the human ear is responsible for balance in this way. The cristae in the semicircular canals are stimulated by changes in direction and speed of movement. And the maculae in the succulus and utriculus are stimulated by changes in the position of the head. So they are sensitive to gravity. When stimulated, the cristae and maculae convert the stimuli received into nerve impulses. That is the purpose of any receptor. Remembering that cristae and maculae are receptors, what's the purpose of a receptor? A receptor receives a stimulus and creates an impulse. So when stimulated, the cristae and maculae convert the stimuli received into impulses, and the impulses are transmitted along the auditory nerve to the cerebellum to be interpreted. Completed by saying the cerebellum then sends impulses to the muscles to restore balance. All of this, if you can remember this, my darlings, can give you up to 5 marks in an exam. And many kids think that they will just ignore this. Ignore this at your peril, my darlings, because being asked about balance is a level 1 question, and you should capitalize on any level 1 question given to you. To end up this entire section on nervous coordination, we're looking at hearing defects, and one of the major hearing defects is caused by a middle ear infection, where when you have a cold, you find that the mucus actually comes up your eustachian tube, and there we go, it comes up here and fills up this entire middle ear. And when it does, it exerts a lot of pressure on the tympanic membrane, causing a hell of a lot of pain. So how then do they rectify it? Normally they take antibiotics, etc. But if the antibiotics do not work, they insert little button-like structures called grommets. Grommet is like a tiny button with a hole, which is inserted inside your tympanic membrane, in your tympanic membrane. And the hole in the grommet will allow the fluid that accumulated here to leak out and come out of the ear, thus decreasing the pressure on the tympanic membrane. And the other hearing defect is deafness. Now, deafness can be caused by many factors: injury to parts of the ear, like your tympanic membrane, or the auditory nerve, or even the part of the brain responsible for capturing the sensation of hearing. Hardened wax in the ears will prevent the sound waves from traveling through efficiently, and then your tympanic membrane can't vibrate, and you'd find that your organ of Corti will not be stimulated, leading to deafness. Okay? So even if your ossicles, your ossicles are your hammer, anvil, and stirrup, if they become hardened, we also have a problem there, because they will not be able to transmit the vibrations efficiently to the oval window. And then if the oval window is not vibrating freely, then the vibrations don't go to the inner ear. And remember, we want it to go to the inner ear because what is found in the inner ear is the cochlea, which is a receptor sensitive for pressure waves, or sensitive to the pressure waves. Okay, so to correct this, you either use hearing aids. Hearing aids actually amplify the sound which is coming into the ear, and cochlear implants. So, my darlings, this brings an end to the section on nervous coordination. We'll be looking at quite a few questions on nervous coordination, but let's just end up this session by looking at some questions on the ear. We look at this one here, okay? This is giving you the diagram of the ear. Let's try and label it. I'll give you about 30 seconds for you to label it on your own. When I say label it from A to F. Try that. Did you get it? Let's see. A would be auditory canal. Remember, we said it is lined by wax glands. It provides a pathway for those sound waves to now reach the tympanic membrane. B is a tympanic membrane, which will vibrate and transmit the vibrations to these ossicles. How do you remember the order of the ossicles? You remember the mnemonic HAS, H-A-S. So that is your hammer, anvil, stirrup. D, of course, they're looking at your 3 semicircular canals here. E would be your auditory nerve, and F is your cochlea. And inside of your cochlea, you've got your organ of Corti, which is sensitive to those pressure waves. Okay, so I just want to do a little table for you just to capture all those receptors that we came across. Okay, just to capture the receptors that we came across and what they are sensitive to. So the first one was the organ of Corti. Isn't so? Organ of Corti. That was found in the cochlea. Yeah. And that was sensitive to, it's a very different kind of table. That was sensitive to your sound waves, okay? But they like to call it pressure waves because it is moving through fluid in the inner ear, okay? All right, my darlings. So that's your organ of Corti. So that was the first one. Organ of Corti, that was the first one. Then when we came down to the semicircular canal, we came across the cristae, isn't that so? And the cristae, we said they were sensitive to the speed and direction of movement. And where were they found? In your semicircular canals. And the last receptor that we came across was the maculae. And we said it is sensitive to gravity or the position of the head. Are you with me? So the organ of Corti was one. The organ of Corti was one receptor. The other receptor was Christi. And the third receptors that we came across were the maculae. Always bear that in mind, okay? And remember that. Give the function of the pinna. Well, we've been to B, C, and F. Give the function of the pinna. Of course, it will trap the sound waves and direct it into the auditory canal. Write the letter of the part which contains receptors for balance. Of course, it will be D. Sometimes they say write the letter and the name. So here they only ask for the letter. Which one equalizes the pressure on either side of part B? That's your tympanic membrane, my dear children. Which one will equalize that pressure there? So there's your tympanic membrane. It would be your eustachian tube. It can either suck up air or expel air to equalize the air pressure on either sides of the tympanic membrane. That means here and here, because both these areas are filled with air, isn't that so? So the air pressure there must equal to the air pressure there. Which one transmits impulses to the brain? Of course, it is E. E being your auditory nerve. Describe how hearing occurs. Just like how I told you, you must know the balance and equilibrium. Of course, you must know hearing, and we said Pat has OCAR, something like that as our mnemonic. So let's see how they put it down, and we'll go through it in the answer here. Let me just erase off our receptors, organ of Corti, Christi, and macula. Sound waves are directed into the auditory canal by the pinna. Sound waves make the tympanic membrane vibrate, and the vibrations are passed to the ossicles, or you can say to the hammer, anvil, and stirrup. The ossicles will make the oval window vibrate. So Pat would be pinna captures the sound. A would be auditory canal, will allow the sound waves to go through, PAT, and T would be the tympanic membrane vibrates. Let me just write it down here, darlings, one more time. So as we are going through this answer, we'll check now how exactly we can use this mnemonic. So PAT, PAT, has, O, okay. So sound waves are directed into the auditory canal by the pinna. So you can say the pinna captures the sound waves and directs it into the auditory canal. The sound waves make the tympanic membrane vibrate, and the vibrations are passed on to the ossicles. Or you can say hammer, anvil, and stirrup, because they are the three bones making up the term known as the ossicles. The ossicles will cause the oval window to vibrate O, and this causes pressure waves to be set up in the inner ear. So remember, it was just like sound waves there, but once it comes to the inner ear, because there's fluid, we call it pressure waves. These vibrations also cause the organ of Corti to be stimulated, and it generates impulses which are sent to the cerebrum via the auditory nerve. The cerebrum will interpret the impulses as sound, and what the R stands for is that the extra pressure waves are absorbed by the round window. As absorbed by the round window. So I just added that to your mnemonic. And if that's perfectly fine with you, we're wrapping up this particular part of the video, looking at your balance and recapping about hearing and finding the answer to this activity. I hope you have understood, my dear children. And when I see you next, I'll be going through a variety of questions on nervous coordination that will prepare you brilliantly for the examination. Until we meet again, God bless.